Hi, in this video, I am going to talk about the value of biodiversity. Both in social and popular media, people used to talk and argue about the conservation of nature. Why we need to conserve nature? The conservation of nature, the sole reason for conserving nature is to conserve ecosystem diversity. The ecosystem diversity depends on the landscape diversity and the species diversity. And the species diversity is again depending on the genetic diversity. So if you need to conserve the nature and the ecosystem, there should be ecosystem diversity should be conserved, and the species diversity should be conserved, and the genetic diversity should be conserved. In this video, we are going to talk about what are the importance and the values of ecosystem, or why we need to conserve this nature and the biodiversity. The value of biodiversity can be analyzed in three different points: economical values, ecological values, and ethical and aesthetical values. Firstly, the biodiversity have the economical values. These values are rather direct. We can directly calculate the value of the services provided by biodiversity for the food, medicine, and industry. We are extracting so many things from the nature. In order to extract these things, there should be the preserved ecosystem should be there. So that's are the direct values or economical values of biodiversity. Secondly, we have the ecological values. Ecological values including the essential services provided by the ecosystem. If an ecosystem need to provide the services like providing fresh air and pure water, the ecosystem should be conserved and there should be a healthy ecosystem there. For a healthier ecosystem, the ecosystem should have different species and biodiversity should be there. So for getting these services uninterrupted and in the best possible way, there should be a conservation of biodiversity. And finally, ethical and aesthetical values. We have the moral responsibility to protect whatever only known living companions in this universe. And there is aesthetic values to the biodiversity also. We are going to see each of these points more details. Firstly, we are going to analyze economical values. As I already said, economical values are also called the direct values of biodiversity. We can directly count, estimate the how much amount of economic benefit we are getting from the biodiversity. And first, we are analyzing medical value of biodiversity. Is there any medical value for this biodiversity? Yes, of course. We have so many medical medicines coming from nature. 70% of world population is depending on plants as a sole medicine. So if we need to have plants for the medicine, there should be diverse type of plants. So we should conserve the diversity. And 40% of prescribed and non-prescribed drugs in allopathic medicine come from plants or animals. So it's a huge number, 40%. Have you ever had a allopathic medicine which is came from nature? Yes, of course. Like aspirin. Aspirin is actually extracted from a tropical plant, tropical willow. It's called Salix alba. It's actually firstly extracted from that plant. Without that plant, we couldn't have discovered such a drug. This, secondly, you can see this flower. It's called a rosy periwinkle. It is discovered from Madagascar. You might have seen the movie Madagascar, but this plant come from the real island Madagascar. The medicine extracted from this plant, rosy periwinkle, is used to treat childhood leukemia. The survival rate of childhood leukemia was 10%. By using this medicine, the survival rate is increased to 90%. And this drug is also used for Hopkins disease treatment. And using this drug, this disease is treatable. And secondly, if you see the cancer drugs, 62% of cancer drugs are produced from either plants or animals. 62%. Then you might have known about the quinine drugs, which is used for the treatment of malaria. This drug was actually isolated from cinchona tree in the tropical rainforest, and we have other benefits from this biodiversity and medicine, the relationship between the biodiversity and medicine. You might have seen the images of this animal, nine-banded armadillo. This is used as a model system for leprosy disease. The bacteria responsible for leprosy do not grow in like lab animals like rat and mouse. It can be grow only in this uh, armadillos, and which is used as a model system. Then the antibiotics, most of all of the antibiotics are produced from natural sources, the bacteria and the fungus living in the nature producing these antibiotics. So what does it mean actually? Because if we need to find more and more medicine from the nature, we should have the biodiversity. We should have different types of plants. We should have different types of animals. We have should have a huge varieties of microorganisms in this world to provide medicine for all these diseases. Like, we are pretty sure that one of the plant or animal in this world is producing a medicine against coronavirus. We need take time to find this plant or animal which is producing the medicine. Almost all diseases have medicines in the nature, but it's difficult to find. If you have a huge biodiversity, there will be multiple sources, organisms are producing these medicines. If you have only few organisms, it's difficult to find a cure for such diseases. So nature is always a reservoir for drugs, reservoir for these medicines. So in order to keep this reservoir for upcoming threats or the already existing threats of these diseases and conditions, we should have biodiversity. So a diverse ecosystem can find this cure for all diseases, and all of the medicines can be produced from there. There are right now we have the recombinant DNA technology to transfer a gene from one organism to another. But in order to get that particular gene, we should have the organism which is already having this particular gene, so that we can transfer this gene to another organism for the better production. So nature is always a reservoir for medicine. In order to keep that reservoir, we should have the ecosystem diversity and the species diversity. These are a few examples that I say. Then second value is the agricultural values. All of our crops like wheat, corn and rice, they were originally the wild plants. We domesticated the plants and increased productivity. And sometimes we need the wild companions of these plants, just like in Green Revolution. In Green Revolution, we need the plants which is short so that it won't grow uh, when we use excess fertilizers and the irrigation. So the source was the wild plants. We take these genes from the wild plants, and by breeding, we incorporate it into the like hybrid varieties. So we always need these wild varieties of wild companions of these crop plants to improve the productivity and we to meet the needs of the universe, to needs of the earth. Then we have the biological pest control measures. The predators and parasites are always controlling the population and the pests from the nature, and the pollinators. Most of the pollinators, such as bees, wasps, butterflies, birds, and bats, they are important to the productivity and yield of the crops. If there is no pollinators, the pollination will go down and the productivity will also go down. These are the agricultural values of biodiversity. Then finally we have the consumptive value. We are consuming things from the nature, just like catching wild animals. It's not like catching the animals from the forest. We are catching the fishes from the sea or the fresh water. That's a wild animal. We are not culturing them. Even if we are culturing the fishes, it is only a small percentage. The most of these fishes are coming from wild catches. So we are getting fishes, shrimps, and crabs from the nature. They are wild harvest. We are getting timber. We are getting wild fruits and vegetables. Then skin, rubber, everything is come from the nature. In research also we are getting like model organisms and other things from the nature. Just think about PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, which is one of the main components in molecular biology and the recombinant DNA technology. The enzyme what we are using for this PCR to run is called a Taq polymerase. Taq polymerase is actually isolated from the organism called the Thermus aquaticus from the Yellowstone National Park. So the biodiversity, the conservation of biodiversity in that area was important. If that area is disturbed by some construction or the agriculture, what happened? The organism couldn't be there. So we don't get that particular enzyme for run PCR reaction. So we are consuming so many things from nature directly. So these are the economical values of biodiversity. Then we have the ecological values. Ecological values are called the indirect values because we cannot like estimate directly the value or the amount generated from this services. They are passive. and not easily discriminable. So the point is that every organism has a role to play in this ecosystem. Whether it is useful to have humans, directly useful to humans for wood or something like that, they have a role to play. That's the main point. These organisms or the ecosystem as a whole is providing services to humans, like they are preserving the natural ecosystem to sustain human life on earth. We cannot disturb, like we cannot live by disturbing all this ecosystem. We need these services from the nature. What are the services we are getting? We are getting fresh air from the nature. We are getting the pure water for to drinking, and everything depending on the health of the ecosystem. If an ecosystem is healthy, that means if it is the healthy ecosystem is characterized by the diversity, a healthy ecosystem should be diverse, then the ecosystem is carrying out all this function more efficiently. So we will get more fresh air, more pure water, and the soil will be more fertile, and these services will be easily available. So a loss of biodiversity, if the ecosystem loses biodiversity, it is not may not be that healthy, so the services will be disturbed. So that's why in some areas people go for deforestation and farming. Finally they end up in having no water. The rain, the climate will change, the soil fertility will be gone. So things that like that happens because of the loss of biodiversity. So to get the ecosystem services, we should have a healthy ecosystem. In order to have a healthy ecosystem, there should be diversity. The biodiversity need to be conserved to have a healthy ecosystem. And these are the services we are getting from the nature, like atmosphere gas supply. We need oxygen, and we need to regulate the carbon dioxide in the environment. That's done by the atmosphere. The climate regulation, water supply, pollination, biological control, like wilderness and refugees, food production. Every services we getting from the ecosystem is due to the this its biodiversity, the health of an ecosystem. Okay. And if you want to, if you can identify, we can actually identify what are the organisms responsible for the services, what are the key organisms in this ecosystem which is providing the services. And we may go for conserving or protecting those organisms which is have some value for us. The problem is that will be very difficult because so many organisms will be involved in each and every process like this, the water purification and fresh air provisions. So it is actually easy to preserve the ecosystem rather than preserving individual organisms. If you preserve ecosystem, all organisms within the ecosystem will be preserved, like means they will be protected. So it's easy to uh, save the ecosystem, and subsequently all the species within the ecosystem will be saved. If you just calculate, these are the calculations made on different ecosystem services. What are the monetary values? They just calculate how much value each of this ecosystem have, just like open ocean. It's worth about 8,381 trillion US dollars. That's way too much amount of money. If you just measure the world richest person, the Jeff Bezos, he has only like 0.12 trillion US dollars, 0.12 trillion US dollars, and open ocean is worth 8,381 trillion dollars. And every year, the services provided by the ecosystem, if we just calculate what are the, if you want to make the fresh air, how much you need to invest. If you want to make fresh water, what you want to invest, what it takes to keep the fertility artificially. If you put all that together, the ecosystem is providing services for 33 trillion US dollars per year. The services provided by the ecosystem value approximately 33 trillion US dollars. And you know the GDP, the gross domestic productivity, we used to hear in the media like it is increased or decreased, and in previous time it was high and it is going down, things like that. If you combine the GDP of all the nations in this world, that's come only 19 trillion dollars. So the natural services for 33 trillion dollars, and the whole GDP, whole thing, everything human made our efforts came up to 19 trillion US dollars. So nature is giving services, although it is for free, it is worth too much. If you think about examples of preserving nature, I have two examples, both from New York City. Here is one case of getting the fresh air, fresh water. Here in this graph, you can see this is New York City, and the fresh water for New York City is actually derived from a place called Catskill Mountain. Here, here they have a water reservoir, natural water reservoir. They are taking this water and pumping to New York City. In earlier 2000, to 21st century, they have a proposal to make a water plant for New York City, and making a water treatment plant costs around 6,000 billion US dollars. No, sorry, 6,000 million US dollars. 6,000 million US dollars are required to make a plant to get fresh water to New York City. And it also take 300 million US dollars as operational cost. So for a water, uh, to get water supply for the whole city, the water plant, the initial cost is like 6,000 million US dollars, and annually they need to spend 300 million US dollars as operational cost. But what they have done, they have studied this area, this Catskill Mountain, and they have made a plan to conserve the nature around this Catskill Mountain. And they successfully done it, and its cost was 100 million US dollars a year. They have been made a plant. They have don't have any operational cost. What they have done, they just preserve the environment around this mountain area. So preserving take only 100 million US dollars a year, and they are getting pure water without any treatment. So that's the story. Like, the nature can provide us with all essential services if we preserve the nature in a good way. Another example is the Central Park. You might have heard about this Central Park, and it is the most filmed area in the whole world. Central Park, you can see it from the figures. This area is Central Park. You can see the buildings all over. It's in the heart of New York City, which is the largest city in the world. So it's about 850 acres in land area. And if you think about the location, it's walkable distance from the Times Square. Empire State Building is near. The famous Fifth Avenue is very close. So it's the prime location. The land value of this Central Park will come around 1,000 billion US dollars. That's way too much money. But what are the other services provided by the what's the value of services provided by the Central Park? If you convert it into residential area or commercial area, which one will be more profitable? In the first sense, we may think that it's easy to convert this park into a residential or the commercial area because it is in the right now in the heart of the city. But the services provided this park is too much. It is purify the airs. It gives an area for the people to hang out. It's a very well known tourist attractions. So it's provide too much services for the city. It's a green lungs of the city. So that's also important. The conserving the nature is also important. It's an area of biodiversity in the city, in the middle of that city. Now we are going to analyze each of these services separately. First one is like ecological services separately. Firstly, we have biogeochemical cycles. Biogeochemical cycles are actually characterized by energy and chemical flow, the cycling of energy and cycle within the ecosystem. It helps in the removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide accumulation in the atmosphere leads to the global warming. It again leads to the climate change and every bad stuff. So the biogeochemical, the running of the biogeochemical needs the different type of microorganisms. So microorganisms and large organisms, the decomposers. You know the cycle. So It's important. So a diverse population of the organisms is required for running the carbon cycle, which is actually removing the carbon dioxide from the nature, and it's also providing oxygen for us. And the biogeochemical cycle helps in uptake of excess soil nitrogen. Nitrogen is converted to atmospheric gas. Then it's also provide provision for phosphate by changing the solubility of the phosphate in the soil. So ecological, one of the major ecological services provided by ecosystem is biogeochemical cycle, which is again important in the soil fertility, maintain the soil fertility for crops. Secondly, we have the waste disposal. We have to remove the excess pollution from the nature, which is harmful to the human, so it need to be removed. And nature plays a big role in waste disposal. The decomposers, they degrade the dead and other organic matter to inorganic nutrients, and they run the geochemical cycle. It is recycled to the producers. They will produce like uh, biomass and other products, and it also help in break down and immobilization of pollutants. We can actually make a waste treatment plant. You might have already studied the uh, waste treatment plants like primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment. Having that such treatment plants is always expensive, and it's the treatment is most in most cases incomplete. They will reduce the mass of waste, but waste should be will be still there. So breaking down and immobilizing pollutants is a role of the ecosystem, and it's especially important for the heavy metals and the pesticides. The pesticide degradation you might have already studied, like it need multiple step process and multiple organisms are involved. To In order to have that, there should be diversity in the organisms, especially in the microorganism. And the atmosphere also, the ecosystem also absorb pollutants, so that the harmful effect to the humans will be minimized. Next, we have the provision for fresh water. It's an ecological service. You already know the water cycles, and the water cycle is supplies fresh water to the terrestrial ecosystem. This fresh water is used by humans for drinking, irrigation, and other purposes. And it is also important for the freshwater ecosystem, from where we get the fishes and other aquatic organisms for food and medicine. Then we can actually think about desalination of the seawater, but it's very much too much expensive than getting it from rain. So uh, then the forest and other natural ecosystem has a sponge effect. When we have excess amount of water, they soak up the water and it is released slowly, so that we will get water throughout the year. And if the ecosystem or the forest is diverse, the holding capacity of that system will be more, so it will hold more water and it release for long duration. So biodiversity in the forest is important, especially for the plants. Then we have the ecosystem helps to prevent soil erosion. It retain and preserve soil in a fertile way. It prevents soil erosion, and it prevent the loss of minerals and nutrients from the soil. And the fertility of soil is important for the growth of whole ecosystem and for the crops. If you think about an example, the Tarbella Dam. Tarbella Dam is shown in this figure. It is the largest dam in the world. It is located in Pakistan. It has the largest storage capacity to store huge amount of water. But what happened is, like, they have constructed the dam. It was the largest. It has huge carrying capacity. And what they have done, they have like this nearby area have so many mountains. So people go crazy and go for deforestation. So they cut down all the trees in this mountain. And what happens there? This excess soil erosion was there, and the soil come to the dam, and the slit reduce the capacity of dam very fast. Even if they have built a huge dam with a huge storage capacity, because of deforestation and slit, the storage capacity is reduced to a great extent. And ecosystem play a major role in climate control. At the local level, trees provide shade and a serene environment. And globally, forests restore the climate because they take up the carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the one cause the global warming and the climate change. It also provide oxygen. The forest also provide oxygen, and the atmosphere has a buffering effect. If the like the natural calamities like storm and drought, the forests have a buffering effect. The ecosystem itself have a buffering effect. The reduction in the forest reduce the carbon dioxide uptake and oxygen output, which inversely affected, which leads to the climate change. And finally, ecotourism. Natural beauty of ecosystem is always a reason for promoting ecotourism. If you list the places you want to go for your final degree uh, tour or picnic, the places will be beautiful by nature. If you think about any places inside or outside Kerala, the basic reason why we are going there will be, in most cases, will be the natural beauty. So natural beauty is also very important, and there are so many activities are related to this nature, like sport fishing, whale watching, boat riding, hiking, bird watching. So we should have a diverse ecosystem to do all this, and beauty and serenity is a value of ecosystem. And finally, we have the ethical and aesthetic value of ecosystem and biodiversity, and there are so many arguments going on based on this. We have the ethical responsibility to preserve and protect the nature, because every species of this universe has some value. It's as its own right. We are the companions, so we need to protect them. We don't have any right to kill or extinct, to allow them to be extincted. Animals and plants should be treated with respect because they are the companion. They are the only non-companions to humans, and they have the moral arguments. Humans have no right to destroy other species and the environment. Then we share this planet with the several millions of other kinds of organisms. So if you, when we leave this earth, we should protect them also. We should not harm them. And we have the concerns for future human generation. You might have heard the quotation like goes like, we actually inherit this nature. We didn't inherit this nature from our ancestors. We actually borrow it from our future generations. So arguments like that are very valid. And another concept is biophilia. Biophilia is like humans have an innate attachment with the nature and other forms of life. It's like other phobia and philia. We have inherently have a tendency to go to the nature, and we have a compassion within our genes and within our brains. We have some compassion for other forms of life. Without that, our mental and psychological balance won't be there. That's why when people are going for moon or space, they have to go through some training and everything so that they will be resistant to that type of things. And aesthetic values, I don't have to explain what are the aesthetic values of nature. A wild mountain range, or a beautiful flower, or a noble elephant. All of these things remain as the aesthetic values of the ecosystem. In this video, we have talked about the values of ecosystem. We have economical values, ecological values, and ethical and aesthetic values of ecosystem. What I would like to conclude is that it is not just the ecosystem and the biodiversity is not just important, it is essential for human life. We cannot live without this services, getting services from this ecosystem. We need fresh air. We need oxygen to breathe. The oxygen actually come from the ecosystem, these overall different organisms in this. If you destroy all of them, we even cannot breathe. And we need fresh air, we need crops, we need food, and for everything we depending on the ecosystem. And if we need to have an functional ecosystem, the ecosystem should be healthy, and if an ecosystem need to be healthy, it should be diverse. So that's the importance of biodiversity. Thank you so much. See you again. Bye.